Impregnable. That's how the Vale sees itself. Shielded from Westeros by its mountains. They call the entrance to their land the Bloody Gate because, during the Age of Heroes, a dozen armies supposedly smashed themselves against it. Even if they'd gotten through, the roads of the Vale are narrow, steep, and treacherous. Half their men would have slipped to their deaths, or frozen in the mountain snow. Or so the common wisdom goes. Except the Vale has been conquered. Those vaunted mountains didn't stop the Andals who came by the Eastern Sea. The people of the Vale say that Sir Artus Arryn, the Andal general, flew on the back of a giant falcon and slew the Griffin King on top of the tallest mountain. During Aegon's conquest, one of his sisters did the same, flying her dragon over the Bloody Gate and up to the Eyrie, the Arryn stronghold. And the Arryn boy king yielded the Vale in return for a ride on the beast. Do you sense the theme here? The rationalizing of defeats with mythical beasts and the whims of children, instead of acknowledging the root cause, the arrogance of isolation. The men of the Vale are so proud of their mountains, they can't abide any flaw in them. As with the mountains, so too with their blood. The first Andals landed in the Vale as its most powerful lords, the Arryns, the Waynwoods, the Corbrays, like to brag. Through their veins runs the blood of the oldest Andal nobility in Westeros, but through their brains runs an even older folly. That blood matters. If it did, those pure-born lords should have been able to exterminate the hill tribes centuries ago. But those primitive raiders, whose tribes more resemble kennels than families, continue to plague the Vale, even kidnapping an Arryn once. Until Tyrion Lannister, an outsider, no Vale lord ever thought to turn the tribes to the Vale's advantage. That a desperate, warlike people could be useful, not to mention inexpensive. But perhaps the Vale lords consider such thoughts beneath them. After all, the Vale's isolation does breed an abundance of honor and pious bleating, which governs their decisions instead of foresight. Like a blind man who can only guess where his horse is taking him. I doubt Jon Arryn had even prepared for civil war when he raised his banners instead of handing over his young wards, Ned Stark and Robert Baratheon, to the Mad King. Honor demanded, and Lord Arryn obeyed. He'd have done the same if the boys hadn't been the lords of two great houses, who could field mighty armies of their own. But perhaps I give him too little credit. After all, if the war went against them, only Lord Arryn had a nice, impregnable castle to retreat into, and he was wise enough to take poor Lysa Tully into his bed to win the Riverlands as allies. Jon Arryn won, then Jon Arryn died. Wisely, the Vale stayed out of all the ensuing chaos. Its crops did not burn or wither in the fields from lack of men to tend them. Its strength was not drained by forced marches to futile skirmishes. In the Vale, life proceeds as it always has. Calm, proud. A world of high honor undisturbed by armies and men of low birth, but high ambition. Impregnable.
I was born youngest of 8 in Mere, across the narrow sea. So my father gave me over to the Red Temple. In their wisdom, they decided to make me a priest instead of a warrior or a temple prostitute like other children. It was not the path I would have chosen. Sure, I prayed the prayers and I spoke the spells, but I also led raids on the kitchens. And from time to time, they found girls in my bed. Such wicked girls. I never knew how they got there. Then again, I did have a gift for tongues. And when I gazed into the flames, well, from time to time I saw things. Even so, I was more bother than I was worth. When the High Priest foresaw Robert's ascension, he sent me to turn the Storm Lord to the Lord of Light. When Robert seized his crown, we'd take all of Westeros from the Seven in a single stroke. Perhaps they thought Robert would listen to a kindred spirit, or perhaps celibacy had addled the High Priest's brain. I didn't know, and didn't care. I was free. I did my duty as I saw it, drinking and whoring and waving my sword around. The only gods Robert cared about anyway. Years passed, Robert became king, I became a joke. We both became fat. I even won some glory in Greyjoy's rebellion, first through the breach and all that. It's amazing what boldness a full bladder can inspire. But Robert had stopped listening to my sermons a long time ago, even if I'd still bothered to give them. Then came Robert's death, and the war. I'm not speaking of those brats squabbling over the world's pointiest chair. Powers long asleep are waking and moving through the land. I've seen them in my flames. Shit, I've seen them with my own 2 eyes. The Lord of Light is real. And if he's real, then all of it is real. Man once again faces the war for the dawn, which has been waged since time began. On one side is the Lord of Light, the heart of fire, the god of flame and shadow. Against him stands the great other, whose name may not be spoken. The Lord of Darkness, the soul of ice, the god of night and terror. According to prophecy, our champion will be reborn, to wake dragons from stone and reforge the great sword Lightbringer that defeated the darkness those thousands of years ago. If the old tales are true, a terrible weapon forged with the lifeblood of a loving wife's heart. Part of me thinks man was well rid of it, but great power requires great sacrifice. That much, at least, the Lord of Light is clear on. I sound like a dried-out old woman, I know. But as our former hand liked to say, winter is coming. When the cold winds rise, all men, no matter their faith or lack of it, huddle beside my night fires. And I pray the prayers, and speak the spells, and beseech the Lord of Light to bring back the dawn. So far, so good. But reprobate as I am, I can't help but wonder what will happen if, one day, our Lord does not answer. Imagine a night that goes on forever, so dark and full of terrors. I think I need another drink.
For 300 years, the Targaryen dynasty ruled Westeros. Wars were still fought, homes still burned, and men still died. But compared to the chaos of what came before, the realm was stable.
And boring. The Targaryens lied, thieved, and killed as much as other lords. They just had dragons to answer all complaints. Until they didn't. When the last dragon died, it was only a matter of time before the Targaryens followed.
By only, you mean another century?
Which they wasted trying to replace their lost advantage. Incinerating their own palaces to hatch dragon eggs, drinking wildfire to become dragons, and let's not forget the Mad King's favorite, burning men alive so he could pretend to be a dragon.
We urged Aerys to pardon Brandon Stark. The boy had threatened Prince Rhaegar, but Rhaegar had stolen the boy's sister. And the boy was the eldest son of our Warden of the North.
Who's the greater fool, a Mad King or the man who reasons with him? Aerys saw knives in every shadow. When you told him to treat the Starks with caution, you made him afraid. And what he feared, he killed.
I wouldn't have thought you, of all people, would bother with recriminations for Brandon's death, Lord Baelish. Not after your, shall we call it, duel with him?
Brandon was as arrogant as he was stupid. Like his father, Lord Stark, who answered Aerys' summon to the capital. They earned their fates. But the younger son, Ned, what was his crime? That Aerys ordered his death as well.
Unlike men, families don't die when you lop off their head.
At the very least, you should have pointed out that loyal and dutiful Ned was living with Jon Arryn, a proud and over-righteous lord with an impregnable castle and no sons of his own. Perhaps you could have spared Aerys the embarrassment of revolt.
If only we'd had the foresight to consult you, Lord Baelish, but I suppose first we'd have had to know who you were.
Nobody knew Robert Baratheon either, yet he claimed the right to sit on the Iron Throne.
He had Targaryen blood, through his mother.
A pretty dress for an ugly truth. It was war, and he could swing a hammer harder than the other options. When did you know you'd lost, Lord Varys?
When Robert Baratheon killed Prince Rhaegar on the Trident.
Wrong. You lost the war when you let Ned Stark slip back into the north. Neither the bloody gate to the Vale or Moat Cailin in the north have ever fallen. They could have held out for years, even if you'd killed Robert. But you let him slip through your fingers as well.
I told the court that Robert was hiding in the Stony Sept, but the hand of the king wasted too much time searching the city. Something about the glory of single combat. Then Ned Stark's army arrived to save the day.
Too bad Lord Tywin wasn't the hand any longer. He would have simply razed the town and been done with it.
Perhaps. And perhaps the rebels would have found even more of the countryside flocking to their banners.
I'd almost forgotten. You weren't always so loyal to the Lannisters during the war, were you?
I did my duty to the realm. When Lord Tywin showed up at King's Landing professing loyalty, I warned Aerys not to open the gates. Prince Rhaegar was dead, our army scattered. The lion does not stir unless he smells meat.
I admire your powers of persuasion, Lord Varys. Few could traffic in so many secrets to so little avail.
Grand Maester Pycelle told Aerys what he wanted to hear, that his old friend Tywin was there to save him.
Then Aerys' old friend sacked the city, and his son stabbed Aerys in the back.
A regrettable, though necessary action.
As were the pardons the new King Robert bestowed on the Royalists. Mace Tyrell, Barristan Selmy, you.
King Robert wisely chose order over vengeance.
Jon Arryn wisely chose for Robert, but Jon Arryn died. Then Robert, then Ned. So ended their glorious revolution.
And Westeros has been burning ever since.
Let it.
How Targaryen of you. One of the mad ones.
Fire turns even the proudest oaks to ash, leaving newer roots space to climb.
Some houses rise to power through strength, others through wealth. House Frey gained its title through cunning. Centuries ago, its founder looked at a map and noticed how the trident spears the neck, cutting off the north from the south. He realized that a river of gold would flow to the man who owned the right bridge across the water. It took the Freys 3 generations to complete their forefathers' vision. A massive arch of smooth grey rock, wide enough for 2 wagons to pass abreast. When they were done, they built high curtain walls, deep moats, and heavy gates to protect the approaches, and put up squat, ugly, formidable keeps on either bank. The Twins, commanding both road and river with arrow slits, murder holes, and portcullises. The Twins ensure that no one crosses without begging the Freys' leave and paying the Freys' toll. The plan worked. The family grew rich and powerful, exacting gold from lords, merchants, and poor farmers. A good thing too, given the number of Freys the bridge has to support. The current lord, Walder Frey, has seen over 90 name days and sired near as many children, true-born or otherwise. A shameful thing in any other lord, but Walder Frey possesses no shame. A dangerous thing for any other lord, but Walder Frey has no concern for heirs or fear of their impatience. Perhaps Lord Frey thinks to outlast them all. Given the infighting he encourages among them, perhaps he will. Whatever the case, House Frey does nothing so well as survive. When the Ironborn conquered and razed the Riverlands, the Freys hid in their castle. When Aegon and House Tully swept the Ironborn back to their islands, the Freys hid in their castle. When my ancestor demanded their allegiance as Aegon's new Lord Paramount of the Trident, the Freys bent the knee from their castle. Perhaps then we should not have been surprised when my father, Lord Hoster Tully, called his banners against the Mad King, and Lord Walder didn't answer. The Baratheons, Starks, Aarons, and Tullys some of the oldest and greatest houses of Westeros fought and bled for the cause of justice, while House Frey hid in its castle and waited. No doubt if Rhaegar had won at the Trident, Lord Walder would have given him safe passage into the north, to destroy the rest of my husband's northern army for a fair price. But Rhaegar fell, and lo and behold, the Frey army appeared to render aid to our already victorious forces. Many sniggered that Lord Walder had been waiting for his army to come of age, having fielded it out of his own breeches. My own father named him the late Lord Frey, to the other lords' amusement. A slight that pricks Lord Walder to this day. In many ways, however, Lord Walder was wise. We had no guarantee of victory, and had he fought with us from the outset and we failed, he would have lost the bridge his family was so proud of. More pride than honor. Those should be the words of House Frey. Yet part of me wonders if Lord Walder waited not out of fear but hope. That we would be destroyed, leaving him to assume my family's place as Lord Paramount of the Trident. To buy the respect they've always wanted, but refused to earn. No. Not even Lord Walder could be so disloyal.